3, 2, 1. And we are live.
Coming to you live from deep within a muddy but windy and also sometimes sunny radioactive meme land. We are the survivors of the alt-right kekpocalypse. The few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against lobster hordes with Rantzerker number 99. Vice asks Jordan Peterson the Jewish UFO question. It's on all our minds, folks, but Vice had the ball to ask it. This is going to be a 9-minute video. A response to a 9-minute video. And I know from previous Rantzerkers, responding to a 9-minute video will take us days. As such, we will do 1 hour of response followed by an additional gamified hour. That means after the first hour, we keep going as long as there is a super chat featured. As soon as there is no super chat featured, the air horn will sound and we will disappear like the morning dew. If we don't finish this Vice video on air today, me and Mike will take the sloppy remains and finish it for you via Ragening. Our after show today will be a reading from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules, an antidote to chaos, followed by a discussion of said reading. If you want to join us at that time, the link is www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Now let's get the show. I think that was fairly professional. Me and my hateable ball.
Except for your absolute just mangling of kekpocalypse.
Oh, like you just said it well.
Hey, at least I said it.
I said kekpocalypse.
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 Polyps.
Popped lips of cocks.
They're like
loads of funny versions of it.
They're like those.
How can we work lobsters into that?
They're like the precancerous polyps in your kek.
You could also call it Frognarok.
Frognarok. Oh,
Frognarok. Oh God, that is good.
Well, you did a nice twist on that one. All right, so
and people are saying I'm only coming in the left ear, but I think I fixed that too. So if I do sound okay, let me know.
Yeah, just forgive Brian. He's back after a month and a half of absence.
Well, you know, he's a little lopsided now anyway, right? So if his audio is lopsided.
There you go. I'm just compensating on the other side.
Yeah,
you're compensating. I'm sorry I laughed. I'm gonna feel bad now.
No, it was a joke. You're supposed to laugh at it. Don't feel bad.
I know, and for everybody not in the know who doesn't understand that joke because you've just joined the channel, Brian was diagnosed with testicular cancer in July of 2017 and had one of his testicles removed, so thus he is lopsided. And yes, we are horrible, horrible people.
We're awful, but we love awful. Brian.
Yeah.
Well,
regardless if he's asymmetric or not, if he's an asymmetrical doge. All right. So I just want to make some commentary on this. I went on the TVs. Horrible experience, by the way. I don't recommend watching TV. It was just awful. They have things like they call ads. And they come on and you can't get away from them. And they rape your eardrums because they make them so loud. And then all the ads seem to have one theme, which is women use this product to become better than men and tremendous awesome. And after a while, the female empowerment message just really started to bug the shit out of me. But anyway, so I was on TV, watching the TVs to watch this, to watch Vice's news show. And the first thing in the Vice reported on was the conflict in Syria, which I haven't been following, but I did some brief, uninformed research on it, and it looks like it's just a proxy war between a whole bunch of world powers. You know, at least the U.S., at least Russia, possibly also Israel, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. So they're all in there fighting this proxy war. And I noticed that ICE seems to be sucking the State Department's cock over who's to blame and what's going on in there. And it just occurred to me, 18 years ago when I was a lefty, when I was leftist, we actually went to Russian TV to try to figure out what the hell propaganda was on our TV. But I guess now we just agree with the State Department leftist opinion, just open wide calls. The State Department. So anyway, I want to point that out. And then the other thing is that apparently MeToo has come to the Congress. Yay! And then Vice did a report on Jordan Peterson. Yay!
Yay.
Okay, shall we start?
Let's.
The first rule is
Okay, cue up
stand
the
up straight with
size.
your shoulders back. It's like, get ready.
Silence.
Can you guys see it? No, it's playing.
Oh, okay, yes, I see it. I see it.
Do you see it? Do you guys? Does everyone see it?
Yes, it's there.
Well,
it's fine. All right.
I'm watching it in SciTube,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
All right.
You've got things to do. There's chaos to confront. I'm
Remember,
making
we're
this
gonna have to
video
pause it every 20
because I don't.
seconds.
Yeah. I'll go back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making this video because I don't really know what else to do.
This is a YouTube video Dr. Jordan Peterson recorded on September 27th, 2016.
So he recorded a YouTube video talking about how hate speech doesn't make hate go away. And that's a sentiment that a lot of people who have been opposing the media, I guess, oligarchy have been expressing. So he caught a wave there.
well, I think too, right? Like Steven Pinker probably put it best, and he got lambasted for it. Just in a recent thing for Spike.com talk or panel discussion he was in, where he just essentially said, when there are true statements that are driven underground, right? Whatever the reason that those true statements are true, right? There are some true statements that are not allowed to be uttered in polite society in the mainstream, that will get you labeled, just absolutely horrible things, sexist, racist, anti-gay, MRAs go away, blah, blah. But when people then stumble, who have kind of been living in this blue pill world and stumble across a true statement that's been concealed from them, they have no inoculation against, because there's no arguments that exist. There's no arguments that exist to counter the conclusions that certain people who have been privy to those true statements. So the alt-right, might have, they speak a true statement. Blacks commit more crime per capita than other races in America, right? Okay, yeah, that's a true statement, right? Then they bring in their, and here's why, and here's what should be done about it, right? And because none of those things are debated in the mainstream, because the true statement is actually not allowed to even be acknowledged, right? Then the hapless person who stumbles across this true statement, verifies for himself that it's true, is going to say, well, the only people who are willing to even tell the truth are these alt-right guys or the ethno-nationalist guys, and therefore everything else that they say is right, and I can't trust anything else that anybody else says, right? And there are no counter arguments coming from the other side because they're still attacking the truth value of a statement that's actually true. They're still contesting. This was actually Kraut and T's big mistake, was that instead of attacking the question of, okay, so what should we do about it, if anything, what he tried to attack was something that was verifiably true, right? And he tried to essentially say, no, that's complete bunk, that's completely false. No, that's not how you win an argument. You can't win an ideological war or a philosophical argument by essentially saying this true thing that you're saying is actually not true. So it just like, this is the approach that the left seems to be taking, is essentially just saying there are some facts that we're going to say that they're not true because they're too dangerous, or they're unpalatable, or they go against our goals. And so we're going to lie to people and say that those true statements, those facts, are not actually true. And therefore, you actually have people, this is how the left is creating the alt-right. right? And this is what Steven Pinker talked about in this Spike talk. And what happened? He got lambasted from the left for saying horrible racist things that aren't true. And like, it's the same with Jordan Peterson, right? And it really is this absolute resistance to the truth value of an observation, right? It's a descriptive statement. It's not a prescription. It's a descriptive statement. And if you make it so that the descriptive statement cannot be uttered, then nobody has a defense against the prescriptions that the people who are willing to utter that statement might actually also utter, right? So nobody has an inoculation against that. There's no counter argument. So honestly, the entire dialogue's just been poisoned by this inability of particularly people on the left in certain, with certain topics to actually acknowledge things that are objectively true and observable. So, yeah.
I just want to, when we go through this, I just want to point out the race question is one issue, but throughout the entire interview, throughout the interviews that I'm in with Jordan Peterson, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they always seem to go with attempting to make him out, or his group of people that he represents, that have an interest in him, his audience. He doesn't represent them, but they are interested in what he has to say. They always try to make him out to be a threat to women, either him or his audience. And I think they do this a lot in this interview as well. And it always seems to boil down to that. And I wonder actually if Jordan Peterson ever listens to this, if he's ever sort of connected the dots, that it always seems to come down to a threat narrative around women. And if he fails to comply to the creation of the threat narrative, the narrative that he or his audience is harmful to women, then they'll go for the racism or the transphobia, and furthermore, I have never heard them reach for anything related to economic argument. I don't even do we even argue about economics anymore? Is that a thing anymore in our society? Have we just completely decided that that's no longer a thing? All we're going to argue about is the alt-right.
No, what the issue is that, say Trump, like half of his, I guess, platform was based on economics and changing the economic strategy of the US in various ways, through various means. The wall would actually be one way of altering the economic map of the US, right? And he was very, very concerned with economic impacts of various things like NAFTA and illegal immigration and all kinds of other stuff like that. China and its currency manipulation and things like that. The fleeing of businesses from America overseas or down into South America, where they can get the labor cheaper, or down into Mexico. So a lot of his arguments were, at their core, economic arguments. But the entire counter argument to that is you just hate Mexicans, or you just hate the Chinese, or you just hate, women, or you just hate, people who, through no fault of their own, are in a bad place, right? And so essentially, there is no economic argument to be had anymore, because it will always be twisted into some kind of racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic, white nationalist, male supremacist freaking argument. Always.
All right, let's go for another 20 seconds.
Back then, he was an obscure psychology professor at the University of Toronto.
He wasn't obscure.
I think that's...
I'm sorry, he wasn't obscure. He had made multiple appearances, tons of appearances on TVO's The Agenda with Steve Paikin. He had a series based on Maps of Meaning, a documentary series or a lecture series broadcast through TV Ontario. the public broadcaster. He's been guest on lots of different shows and stuff like that. Like, I knew about him years before he made the videos that we're talking about. For me, it was like, oh God, like I saw him on TVO's The Agenda, and I went and I looked for more of his stuff, and there was tons of his stuff out there. There was tons of him being a public commentator out there. He wasn't obscure at all. Thanks.
Let's continue.
Some of the things that I say in my lectures now might be illegal. I think they might even be sufficient for me to be brought before the Ontario Human Rights Commission under their amended hate speech laws.
Peterson was afraid of Bill C-16, a law he claimed would force him to use gender-neutral pronouns like they or them instead of him or her. He refused and protested.
No. Not a law that he claimed. A law that does, right? And it doesn't have, and this is the thing that pissed me off so much, and it pisses me off every fucking time it happens, because it happens a lot, right? All of the people who were pro C-16 said, there's nothing about pronouns in there, right? This law, it doesn't say anything about pronouns. It won't force anybody to use pronouns. Within 2 months of this legislation being passed, the British Columbia Union of Public Employees, right? The British Columbia branch of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, which is the biggest public sector union in Canada, representing pretty much almost everybody who's paid by the tax, whose salary is paid by the taxpayer. So nurses, teachers, whoever, right? They had a lawyer make a video, and one of the first things that she said was, here are the reasons why you should use somebody's preferred pronouns. Number one, it's the law. And then she said, recent changes to federal legislation mandate that you use someone's personal preferred pronouns, or you are in violation of the law. And that's because the law, as it was passed in accordance with the policy documents of a similar law in the province of Ontario, similar human rights law in Ontario. And it said, this law will be interpreted according to those policy documents that have been in existence in Ontario for a while. And those policy documents, and this is the Frankenstein fucking marriage between legislation and policy that occurs, those policy documents do talk about pronouns, and they do mandate that you use someone's preferred pronouns, right? And that's how the law is designed to be interpreted. So, I mean, like, none of this was like, it's just like he believed. No, he knew, because that's what the law and the policy documents spelled out.
And
within 2 months, the same fucking people who are like, there's nothing about pronouns in there, are like, yeah, now it's the law, you have to use these pronouns.
And I would like to point out that I think, what are we up to, 72 genders? All potentially with their own pronouns?
According to some sources, there are no limit to the number of genders that exist.
Oh yeah, because it's a spectrum.
People.
So that's a spectrum. So now we're in a situation where we have something like 8, or are we at 9 billion now? 9 billion genders. Because we also have to include the genders of all the animals, potentially. How are we going to structure language if there are 9 billion genders, each with their own set of pronouns? I mean, how are you even going to talk or refer to anyone?
Well, what's frustrating to me too is that, I mean, it's not, pronouns are not like nouns and verbs. They are a completely different part of vocabulary. They exist in a completely different space within grammar. And within the sort of the overall structure of grammar, they are there specifically to be shortcuts, right? And if you had to replace every pronoun you use with the person you're referring to with their real name, right? And that includes not just he and her, but his and hers, and and you had to construct a sentence completely eliminating all of the pronouns and replacing those pronouns with the person's actual name and whatever that is attached to in the grammatical sense, right? It would make language completely incomprehensible, right? Pronouns are shortcuts. They are like the, in, that, to, as, in, and, it, you, right? They are those core words. They're some of the first words that children learn. They're anchored extremely early, and they're hell to shift. They're fucking hell to shift, right? It's not like a matter of saying, instead of saying Negro, say, African American. Like that's easy. Instead of saying pot, say saucepan. That's easy, right? These are in every fucking sentence. They're there specifically to be super easy stand-ins for more cumbersome expressions of what you mean. And they're locked in at such an early age in children as they're learning language that, like, this particular ask, right? Even if you banned the word pot and said, you can only now from this day forward use saucepan, and every time you use pot to refer to a saucepan, you're gonna be called up on some freaking human rights, prosecution. You could actually do that. You could actually expect people to abide by that rule, right? Even though it's wrong, even though it's not right, it's something that could be done, right? But this pronoun thing, it's just not possible. It's just not fucking possible.
And usually people, how in a functional sense, a lot of people use specific cues to try to figure out which pronouns to refer to a particular person. Like I personally, I struggle even with the pronouns we have. I usually, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but when I speak, I often use she, that, instead of she or he, because pronouns fuck me up. I got some sort of linguistic issue with pronouns. So I almost is using either, I'm always thinking in some sort of gender neutral combination of she and he. And then I have to pause and look at the signifiers and say, okay, what is this individual likely to identify with? And I can only imagine, with our great spectrum of genders, a gender for every wavelength on the visible light spectrum, that this will become a nightmare. We won't be able to speak to each other anymore. And it does actually speak to this whole idea that postmodernism wants to destroy language or make it something that normal people can't use because they'll get arrested. That was 1984. Wow, I don't even think George Orwell could envision this. So,
well,
yeah,
no, I think George Orwell, he was saying things the other way, like Newspeak is the only language that gets smaller all the time, right? But this, we're having a mandated form of language that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the real attack, the real problem with it is that they're specifically choosing things that exist, words that exist to simplify language and to compact huge groups of people, like every name that exists in humanity, every individual can be boiled down into a he or a she, or I guess a they, if you're not sure, right? But or if you're not actually acquainted, if you're talking about people in general rather than men or women, so it's like an expansion of the language that is actually defeating the purpose of why those particular words exist in the first place.
I would actually argue that this isn't an expansion of language. If you make up a whole bunch of nonsense words that interfere with actual meaning being conveyed, it's not an expansion of language. You're actually erasing language by making up child sounds that have no real meaning. And furthermore, why does it matter so much? Like, I mean, I've been in the past have had somebody refer to me as he.
Me too.
Yeah, and it's like, what big deal? So what? Are you that attached to your gender? Do you feel like it defines that much of your life and your identity? Really? Is it that necessary? that everything in your world needs to revolve around someone acknowledging whatever of the 72 genders you are.
Well, what's frustrating for me too, because I have had people, particularly people standing behind me in line at the grocery store or something, and they'll say something like, "Sir," or as soon as this guy goes through, or as soon as this gentleman's done, or whatever, and then I turn around, they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," right? And I'm like, whatever. Like, look at me from the back, broad shoulders, short hair, like, easy peasy mistake, right? Especially since I don't dress very feminine, right? But that just shows you that gender identity is, and this is another very, very reasonable aspect of what Jordan Peterson talks about. Your identity is not solely owned by you. It is in part a negotiation between you and other people, a social negotiation, right? So you cannot be a Rachel Dolezal and say, yeah, but I'm black, and expect people to overlook the pale skin and the freckles, the Irish freckles and the blonde hair that you fastidiously cover up, right? Your identity is not only decided by you, and your identity as a person out in public life, in the public sphere, is, people are allowed to make judgments about you. People are allowed to have an opinion about you, and you don't have the right to dictate what other people's opinions are of you. You can say to them, you're not allowed to call me a slur. You're not allowed to, be uncivil or like really, really rude, or you're not allowed to, like, these are sort of the rules of civility. And you're also not allowed to assault me and incite violence or hatred against me, right? These are all things that are perfectly fine, but that doesn't translate into, you must respect the fact that I am a wingless yellow dragonkin who is asexual and polyamorous, or some shit like that. And also an ornate and expansive building, because I also identify as that.
And my pronouns are
yeah. Yeah, no, it's like there is only so much of an imposition that you can put on other people socially before they will stop wanting to have anything to do with you. And that's their right, or it should be their right, to say, you know what, you're way more fucking bother than you're worth to me. So yeah. You go your way in your direction, I'm going to go my way over here with these people, and you can be alone over there with your funky pronouns and your weird multiplicity of identities that exist in your head, Mr. Dragon / expansive ornate building.
Yeah.
And I pulled that directly from the James Damore lawsuit. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to point out that there's a hierarchy here. So, and they're creating a hierarchy. They're creating a moral hierarchy and a hierarchy of comfort. And people on the top of the hierarchy are the ones who get to use their discomfort to dictate how everyone else behaves and acts. I don't really want society to go back to that kind of thinking. And the other thing is that how long does a group have to be lower down on this hierarchy and subject to the emotional whims of the people on the top before they themselves become oppressed and get a share of the oppressed pie? All right, we have some super chats that I probably should read. Point curation.
I just want to see if I sound louder, so I don't know.
Yeah, you sound louder to me.
Okay. We'll see what they say.
Most of our is fixed because we tried to move the attendees so they were a little more balanced. Okay, so point curation gave us $5 Canadian. I would like to see the Honey Badgers get Jordan Peterson on a show for a show one day. Well, we had him on.
We did have him
We
on.
had him on.
Yeah.
I'd love to have him on again, but I don't. Maybe he probably doesn't talk to me now. So
No, I actually no. I think basically because I've been asking or I've been thinking about having him on, but he's just so fucking busy right now. I think I will wait. I mean, like he's going to be in Edmonton on the 11th. Sorry, everyone, tickets are already sold out. But I got mine. I got my tickets. I was on that like a monkey on a fucking cupcake. Holy shit! The moment they went on sale. And I managed to get a bunch of people who Jordan was kind enough to allow me to buy tickets for a bunch of people who missed out when they expanded that they chose a bigger venue and allowed me to buy up enough tickets for the people that wanted them that got to me in enough time and before he publicized it because the rest of the additional tickets sold out. Right. But, like he's going to be giving essentially a 2-hour lecture and then a 1-hour long Q&A / book signing / whatever. Right. And this is like a 3 hours of him being, right in the thick of what and he's getting requests for interviews and he's been like in Australia and the UK and all over the place. And there's just like, no, I'm not going to impose on him right now. But I will try, once everything calms down with this book tour and everything, I will try and I'll reach out to him and ask him if he wants to come on Honey Badger Radio again. And I think he would be perfectly happy to, Allison. And I think he probably doesn't hate you whatsoever. So
checkmate,
okay.
bigots.
Okay, so the next one is Point Curation, again, gives us $2. Don't take your ball and go home, Brian. And yes, to everybody in the chat, we are having issues with our Doge, his technical issues. We are going to try to work through them and continue to do the show regardless. Jody Jojo says, gives us $2
gotcha.
and says, I like Peterson because he's a trad con. Yeah, but it's a mentality view that we have to actually of all of them, people who actually will preserve the rights and privileges we have in Western civilization are probably going to be the easiest to break through in terms of our issues.
I think actually if you actually listen to a lot of what he talks about, and not just since he got big, but like go back and watch some of his appearances from 3, 4, 5 years ago, on the agenda in particular, right? I mean, like he does have a particular affinity for the Judeo-Christian tradition. He does have a particular affinity for fatherhood as an institution that should be supported by society. He did walk back some of his comments about MGTOW because I think it took somebody kind of essentially saying, okay, well, you're saying that it's not all women, and no, it's not. It's not all women, and that's not what MGTOW is about, or at least that's not what a lot of MGTOW is about. It's not that all women are or all women would. It's that all women could, because the system rewards them for it. It doesn't even just let them do it. It actually rewards them for it. So, and he came and he said, he regretted having made those comments about MGTOW. But I think he still sees an inherently unhealthy society, and I think that he's seeing something that I'm seeing, and I'm not particularly traditional, but when there's a reason why people are freaking out at the idea of men being liberated, and part of it is that once you've liberated everybody, who's going to actually contribute to society? If everybody in society is a free agent and they don't owe anything to anyone but themselves, you're not left with a society. You're left with a bunch of free agents, and everything will just fall apart. And so I think that's that's part of what he sees as being something that I don't know that he can get past his gynocentrism in the sense of, well, you know, if men are going to be obligated to society, then maybe women should be obligated in certain ways too. But I think that he definitely, I don't think it's coming from necessarily a place where he's just like, yeah, women are oppressed and they should be liberated or whatever, or men should stay on the plantation. I think he's just kind of thinking, okay, so what happens if we just let everyone off the leash, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, I would say to that, the real concern right now, and I've been thinking about this very, very carefully, with this Me Too, which shows no sign of ending or being tempered. So we're going to probably be seeing a Me 2, a Me 3, a Me 4, a Me 25. The idea that we need to put women's sexual honor and women's sexual grievances above the functioning of any institution. Right now we've seen Hollywood productions being sacrificed to Me Too. And what I mean by that, by Me Too, is the whole idea behind the listen and believe culture. In other words, not just women's experiences, but women's perceptions of their experiences must be listened and believed, even if they're insane. And somebody needs to be sacrificed to retribution for a woman's perception of being harmed. Not any kind of proof that she actually has been harmed, but her perception of being harmed. That's what listen and believe culture is. And it's already seen sacrificed cultural projects in Hollywood. And there's no indication that it's going to be tempered by anything. So actually, yeah. I mean, there are certain institutions that might have some more innate resistance, either because their audience is more male or because they're governmental. But having more innate resistance to the eventual invasion of Me Too does not mean that they will hold out forever. In fact, they won't. And for the simple reason why our institutions, our cultural institutions, will not hold out against Me Too, is that we hold nothing higher than getting retribution for women's perceived pains, perceived harms, especially when it comes to sexuality, especially when it's against men and it's in a sexual context. So there's nothing that will stop it. There's nothing we will say, yes, we need to hold this higher than getting retribution and women's safety for sexual crimes. So not even sexual crimes.
Yeah, just any harm. Yeah, any harm.
Any perceived harm.
Yeah, and this is actually, I want to direct people as soon as this is done. I want you to all go to a channel called The Glass Blind Spot and watch the second most recent video that gentleman has put up. It's about 54 minutes long, and it goes into the whole Jess Phillips, I wouldn't even rape you thing, and all of the stuff in the UK that's been going down in terms of dealing with cyber violence against women and girls and cyber abuse against female politicians and all of that. And he looks into the Broadband Commission at the UN and Gamergate and all of this stuff. And he just deconstructs it all beautifully. And then I would suggest you go back and watch his entire back catalog, because he's willing to actually write to some of these research firms who did the research and ask them uncomfortable questions and like really actually do sort of an on-the-ground investigation rather than just sort of that online research. He's making phone calls and he's writing emails and he's trying to get to the bottom of things.
So it's the glass blind spot.
Yeah, the Glass Blind Spot. And he's just absolutely brilliant, and he's criminally undersubbed. So,
yeah, I just to finish my thought on the Me Too phenomenon and listen and believe culture, and the fact that it's going to eradicate society. So there's nothing that actually, what we're facing right now is literally the answer to the question is, if there is nothing that we hold higher than retribution for women's perceived harms, just perceived, not actually proven, just perceived harms, then we will be left with nothing. our society will be left with nothing. There will be nothing left of it, because we'll sacrifice every aspect of society in order to pursue retribution against women's perceived harms. So right now, we already know that it's ending. That's going to be the end game, because nothing higher than it, and we will sacrifice all of society in pursuing it. No moral good higher than that. So when I look at people who have a concern about letting men, acknowledging men's vulnerabilities, acknowledging the harms that society is doing to men now, and they're saying, well, if we give them that, then we're just letting them loose. We're letting the oxen off the cart. To that, I would say, the only thing that's going to stop MeToo, the only thing is if we care about its impact on men. If we start to care of the fact, see due process, that we start to care about the fact that there's now basically a social lynching going on, and a woman levels her finger and a man's life is dead. He's still alive, but his life is dead. No career, no family, no children, just gone, just puffed right out, just pulled out of the social sphere. Like he no longer gets to exist in it. The only thing that's going to stop that is recognition of men's vulnerabilities and actually caring about the harm in men. There's nothing else that's going to stop it. So
and this is something that I think that as someone like Jordan Peterson, this is a conversation that he would absolutely be willing to have. I mean, like, you have to realize too, right? Like he has a particular area or a particular angle from which he's looking at things. And gender issues, other than the sort of the evolutionary psychology aspect of things and the his resistance to the blank slate ideas and the sort of the gender as a social constructionist model thing, he's not a men's rights activist. He's not immersed in any of this. And I think that honestly, a conversation between Allison and Jordan would be quite interesting. And I think he'd be convinced by a lot of what she has. I think he has been convinced by a lot of what she has to say in the past.
And I just want to bring up something specific to the recent Jordan Peterson and Kathy Newman interview. It was when Jordan Peterson brought in his personal vulnerability to, he said Kathy Newman's in a position where that's what she should be doing. She should be risking offending him. But she can only really recognize the logic of why people give each other the right to offend, why we give the right to offend, when she actually recognizes that it's possible for her to be silenced by someone else's vulnerability. She can only start to walk through the logic of why we have these laws, why we respect each other's free speech, when she experiences the moment of being silenced by someone else's vulnerability, or potentially being silenced by someone else's vulnerability. At that moment, as a woman, she can start to understand the logic that men have built up between each other, so in trying to cooperate with each other and trying to defend themselves against larger institutions that can crush them, but based on whims, or even an aristocracy that, throughout most of human history, lots of aristocracy felt free to say, I'm vulnerable to the speech of peasants, therefore I'm going to put them, shove hot lead up their ass and cut off their heads, Absolutely. And so we had to go through this, almost entirely went through the process of bringing everyone under heel to the idea that offense is something that should be accepted, that you might be offended by the dog of others, and that is a right to uphold. So the powerful can't silence those that do not have power, and that's something that men have negotiated with each other and negotiated with institutions over centuries, and it's something that women. We like to think that women just, innately understand all of these logical and moral and ethical conundrums, but women just walked onto the political scene with franchisement. They just stopped, before that, the women who were politicians were aristocrats. So, they wouldn't have understood these compromises. When women walked into the political scene and became citizens, and became enfranchised and lost that the place that they were at in history, where the government basically just didn't look at them at all. It wasn't that they weren't citizens, they weren't considered human beings. It was that they were exempt. They were exempt from a lot of things, including taxes. That would be a status I would love to have, by the way. Anyway, so they walked into this, and they don't have that history of negotiating these compromises. They don't have that history of understanding that the vulnerability should be able to silence you. So when Jordan Peterson brought his vulnerability to Kathy Newman's offense into the equation, I think for the first time she had to contend with these conundrums. How do we uphold free speech in the presence of potential offense? She had to struggle with these conundrums, and she managed to get like the first little building block of a sensible system, of understanding a sensible system, when she said, oh, well, you consented to coming on to the show, so you consented to being potentially offended. So she has the first building block that there may be spaces in the world where people enter and should expect to be offended or experience potential offense by new ideas. She's got the first building block there. She just one, but she managed to have one. And if she went home and she had another Jordan Peterson telling, Kathy Newman, the fact that you're requiring me to purchase you expensive shit for Valentine's Day, that's offensive to me. If she had another Jordan Peterson saying in another context, what you're doing, how you're behaving, and what you're saying, Kathy Newman, it's potentially offensive to me. So I don't think you should. If she had a constant stream of Jordan Petersons throughout her entire life pointing out that they could silence her through an appeal to their vulnerability, Kathy Newman probably would understand why free speech exists and why we need to be able to offend people in order to have a just society. But she doesn't. As a woman, she's had one instance of a man using his vulnerability to say, this is what it feels like for you as a woman to be silenced because of someone else's vulnerability. She's experienced one instance of it. But if you think about it, if she experienced that constantly, she would understand, and she would never advocate for a society in which we silence based on people's vulnerabilities, because she'd know what it felt like to be silenced based on somebody's vulnerabilities, and she would want compromise. And that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to bring up, is if we change that dynamic between men and women, if men actually say, hey, you have to contend with my vulnerabilities, women would understand the compromises necessary to run a civil society, and they would advocate for them. We wouldn't see Kathy Newman's coming up and saying, oh no, but if you offend someone, you should be silenced. Because they would understand that creates an absolutely unequal, vicious society. And they would understand it because when someone brought out their vulnerabilities, they would feel that choking sensation in their throat as they feel like they're about to be silenced. And they would understand that is a violation. And that is in of itself offensive. But of course, Kathy Newmans of the world, because they're women, they can go throughout their entire life never understanding the idea that you could be silenced by someone's vulnerabilities. And this is the kind of conversation that I think we need to have about our habits as men and women and how they create a society, how they come together and our choices in behavior, men and women, create society becomes an emergency of them. Anyway, I've ranted long enough.
Okay.
So let's do a few more.
Okay, so
unless Karen wants to say anything to that.
I want to.
No, that was all good.
Yeah, it was good. That's actually like leaning towards a thing that we talked about this before, but yeah. It looks like all signs point to men and women. Okay, so more super chats. Where do you guys leave off at? And do I sound all right?
I can't. I'll have to ask the chat actually answer.
No, I asked the chat. I was just that was directed at the chat.
Joey Jojo didn't like Peterson because he's a trad.
Okay.
Sorabrand says, so you guys are furries? No, we're not furries.
No, we're not furries.
Chad Joey, woo. The control over language and dictation is often the first step towards ideological dogma, in our opinion. Yep. Sure. Orthram gives it's fine. Men don't need to be able to talk. We're all mind readers, right? Seems like you're supposed to be. Syria de Flora.
gives us $5. I am writing a paper on men's rights. Do you have any reputable sources you can suggest that I use?
No, we're not going to do that. Go do a search.
It depends. Okay, it depends on the topic, and I'm gonna volunteer myself and say, if you email me at girlwriteswhat@gmail.com with specific topics, then I'll probably get back to you. And if you've already emailed me and asked, or whatever, and I haven't gotten back to you, bump me again, because things get buried underneath the piles and piles and piles of stuff that comes in, and so I might have even started to answer your questions and then just got doing something else and forgot. So, because I'm forgetful that way. So
okay.
Excellent.
Exploding Prinny gives us $5 and says, welcome back, Doge. No one else gets my game references, dude. Somebody name didn't get transferred said feminism promotes spiritual and mental castration. Don't worry about it, we got to get through
That's
this.
Xiao Jie Wu, same person from before.
Kind Torment gave us $5 and said an HBR show that is at a time on a game night so I can watch and support. I got a GURPS game at 6:30 and MST, Mountain Standard Time, every other Thursday. Keep being awesome. All right, so I think we might have more than that, but I don't know for sure.
That's all there is.
We're good?
Yep.
Are we at, let me check the time. I'm going to do time check.
We're 48 seconds into the video.
I know we're 48 seconds. Okay, so we got under 10 minutes for
like
the
a
first
new record.
hour. I know it is. But it's like, the thing is that talking about the whole stuff around Jordan Peterson, I mean, lice is a non sequitur. You know that they're full of shit and they don't understand half of the things that they even report on. But Jordan Peterson brings up stuff that you can really get your teeth into. So,
yeah.
Shall we do another 20 sec?
Let's do it.
You have no idea if I'm your enemy. You have no idea about me.
You won't use my pronouns, so I'm pretty sure you're my enemy, yes.
Yeah, well, I know you think that, but I don't believe that using your pronouns is going to do you any good in the long run. I think it'll do quite the contrary.
What?
These videos all went viral, and Jordan Peterson became the...
Brian, stop.
I did.
Okay. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I don't know why I kept going. Huh.
Oh,
okay, well, that was bizarre. Anyway, so that's totally taken out of context. What was the context, Vice? Was there a context? Like, did he just say to somebody...
It's pretty... Well, obviously there was conversation before that, but it seems pretty clear if you have an IQ over 80 that what Jordan is saying is... just because someone is denying you something you want does not mean that they are your enemy, because what you want may not actually be good for you. Right? Like, if you're a 5-year-old and you...
I really want cake for dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you...
Every night.
Yeah, and if somebody says, I don't think that's good for you, and you say, you are my enemy...
Yeah.
That's like, yeah, are you 5? I mean, and seriously, not trying to like make fun of this person who clearly thinks that the pronoun thing is really important to them. But Peterson might be right. Maybe just because you think you really want something, maybe you don't really realize that it's not going to be good for you in the long run. It's not a good long-term solution.
This is one of the things too that comes up in the transgender debate, right? Is that you know, the whole idea of puberty blockers, right?
Yeah.
You know, so yes, gender dysphoria can be diagnosed in, you know, in preteens and you know, kids before puberty. Yes, it can be, but a substantial portion of those kids, once they go through puberty, resolve their gender identity issues just on their own, right? So you have to look, you have to be able to balance you have to weigh the harms and potential benefits for both those groups of people, the ones who go through puberty and still have gender dysphoria, and the ones who who go through puberty and somehow get over it with that second massive hit of hormones, right? The first massive hit of hormones is shortly after birth, I believe, and then you get your next one at puberty. So essentially, if you're giving these kids puberty blockers, there's a fairly good chance that these were kids who would have just come out the other side of puberty and been fine with the gender they were assigned at birth, and wouldn't have had to go through all of the medical and hormonal and surgical interventions of transitioning, right? Which are and which impact your life in such a way that it makes dating difficult. It makes having children, forming families difficult, right, and complicated, and all of that stuff. And so, I mean, you have to actually look at the entire picture, and the trans activists just absolutely refuse to accept the fact that those kids that come out the other side of puberty feeling fine about the gender they were assigned at birth, that they should be brought into the equation and taken into consideration when it comes to questions like puberty blockers and stuff like that. Like they think that should just be kept out of the discussion, and I think that's inhumane, and the whole idea and the whole argument from some of these trans activists and people, the gender activists who are, because there's a difference between transsexuality or transgenderism and sort of the non-binary, infinite number of genders people. I mean, the transgender people want to go from being male to being female, or being female to being male. They want to switch from one to the other. They don't want to inhabit some wonky, weird, woo-woo place where, there's no category except just them in terms of gender. But they want to say that anybody who has a problem with their goals, right, or with what they want policy to be, or with what they want other people to do, right, is a denial of their humanity. You are erasing our existence and denying our humanity. And both of those arguments are completely hyperbolic and have absolutely nothing to do. They're just hyperbolic rhetoric designed to evoke an extremely negative response to anybody who has anything to say about maybe what we should be doing, and that maybe it's different from what they think. So
actually, let's listen to it again and see what exactly he said. Somebody in chat pointed something out. Just go back a few seconds and
go back a few seconds. Okay. Yeah. Oh, like to this part, to the conversation? Okay.
Yes, indeed.
I have no idea if I'm your enemy. You have no idea about me.
You won't use my pronouns, so I'm pretty sure you're my enemy, yes.
Yeah, well, I know you think that, but I don't believe that using your pronouns is going to do you any good in the long run. I think it'll do quite the contrary.
I get what the individual is saying. He's not saying he's not going to use that individual's pronouns. That it might not be of benefit to him or her in the long run.
Exactly.
That has nothing to do. In his interview with Kathy Newman, he explicitly said that he has never, as he referred to, abused a student in his classroom. So I assume that if a student came up to Peterson and said, corrected him on his use of their pronouns, and it was a reasonable request, not my pronouns are. Professor Peterson, I hope that you respect that. I'm pretty sure that Professor he actually respect the request, and I think he said so.
Yeah, no,
polite request, he'll do it.
Well, he didn't say that just if it's polite request he'll do it. He actually expects the other person to make some kind of effort to facilitate the naturalness of that, right? So he would not. I don't know if you guys are familiar with somebody who used to be, I don't know if they are online anymore, named by the name of Varmint Coyote. But this was obviously a guy. He looked actually like Frank Zappa, with a full fucking beard and a thick woolly mustache, and his one concession to his identity as a woman was that he wore a pink hoodie, and he expected people to call him she, right? And I'm sorry, but if you're not prepared to present as a woman, or to at least look like you're attempting to present as a woman, right? Then, and it has nothing to do with, I look at somebody like ContraPoints and I'm like, okay, I'll call you she. I can do that, right? Absolutely. You have long hair. Even Justin Dennis or Riley
Dennis
now.
Yeah.
I will even go so far as to call that person a she if that's what they want, right? Because, they
made an effort,
at least some effort, to actually facilitate some kind of naturalness in terms of me using those words. I don't have to constantly remind myself this large, burly, hairy man with the wild, woolly beard halfway down his chest actually wants to be called she.
My name is Betty.
Yeah.
It is a good point, because there are signifiers, there are nonverbal signifiers that we live in, and it does. To a certain degree, the individual does have to abide by the signification, like reasonable cues of society. If we don't, if we get into this situation, which is really interesting, this is something that sort of occurred to me, and I have no concrete explanations for, but it seems like the new leftists are really going for this total, the individual should have total freedom, but in a collective sense, and yet their opposition number is sort of but the individual has responsibilities to society, which is a collectivist argument. So it's interesting.
Well, society itself is a collectivist endeavor. It is a collective thing, right? And this is what gets me about sort of the collectivist versus individualist argument. And I think someone like Steven Pinker at the Spike.com panel discussion put it beautifully, right? That, there is you can say to somebody, and this is a truth, this is a basic truth, and I don't think anyone would argue with it, that capitalist societies are better than communist ones. Would you rather live in North Korea or South Korea? Would you rather live in the Soviet Union or the United States or, somewhere else, right? And that's a truth statement, but then people take it really, really far, certain people, and they're like, okay, so absolutely no collectivism. There should be absolutely no collectivism, and taxation is theft, and blah, 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 blah. And I agree, taxation is too high, and it should be limited, and I would go for the smallest government possible. But society in itself is a collective endeavor, and even capitalist systems, systems that are or that originate through a distribution of intelligence and a distribution of will between different people rather than being planned economies. Those are also collective endeavors. So the whole you need to have a balance between there's no system that's going to work perfectly, that's going to solve everybody's problems, and that's going to actually, unless we're all robots, it's going to make for a functional society. We need to have a balance of different approaches, which is actually one of the things that Jordan Peterson talks about all the time, is that you need to always have sort of the left and the right in a conversation with each other, and you have to have the left and or the liberals and their sort of desire to go over the hill and explore the unknown and all the new things, and let's just fucking run over that hill. We don't care what's there. Whatever it is, it's going to be sunshine, lollipops, rainbows, and everything that's wonderful. Just like this whole gender stuff, right? And then you have conservatives there to put on the brakes and say, okay, wait, what's really over that hill? And you need both, right? You need this multiplicity of approaches, and you need to have a conversation between them. And that's, I think, what we're in danger of losing in the current climate, the current political climate around gender, the current political climate around economics.
In danger of losing.
Okay, yeah, no, of losing for good.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. We could probably regain a lot of this stuff with shifts in our personal habits. And I think that personally, I think it all comes down to habits and how we interact with each other, and what men and women, well, basically what men will tolerate from women. And to be honest, when people start talking about scapegoats, or not even that we need to adhere to this word. This is the word that will fix the world, or this is the word that will destroy the world. It sort of feels like exteriorizing blame when we should all be just looking at our individual habits and how they contribute to the greater society.
Well, okay, I think this is one of the biggest problems with atheist arguments against scripture, whatever scripture it is they say, well, it's inconsistent. Well, yeah, because everything's contextual. And so it's like, everything is contextual. Every single occurrence is happening within a broader context of what else is going on at the time. And so things are, the same action is going to be different, have different impact, whatever, depending on, and so, I mean, you can't, and this is really the thing, is like the multiplicity of approaches, and there is no perfect system. There is no one word that can be uttered that we can actually form a path through life, adhering only to that. And principles sometimes are as much a cage as they are a tool in many cases, if you apply them completely without any kind of sense of nuance or whatever, right? So, I mean, it's just, what I'm saying is, this is what he's getting at. This is the conversation that Jordan wants to have. He wants to see it between men and women. He wants to see it between the right and the left. And this is why he's being seen as an enemy of the people who are currently in control of the public discourse on these issues.
All right, well, apparently the air horn bot is broken, so I can't air horn it, but we are now in the second hour, which is the super duper chat hour.
What's a super duper chat?
Well, no, I just add the duper because people are always complaining about the fact that I get super chat. I call it Snapchat.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
I thought I would call it something really right. All right. So if you want us to continue to speak, then you need to put in the super chats. And Sean 487 Sean has graciously given us $100 Canadian. Topic for future show: relations are dead between men and women, especially with #2. What is next for marriage, work, child rearing? Okay, well, I will take that as a topic for a future show and not discuss it on this one.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about something like that. I've been thinking about this for a while. Perhaps with Aiden. So, yeah, we're going to try and do something with that. But thank you.
Fresh. Get someone fresh, because we're...
Well, that's why I chose Aiden.
Everybody's bored of me, so...
I know I am. Okay, Werner
Me too.
Herzogian.
Herzogian.
$5. Herzogian. $5. I think it's important to note when he's wrong. For instance, lobsters aren't affected by SSRIs like humans, and his traditionalist views. Well, yeah, everybody should be called out when they're wrong. Not called out, just pointed out. I don't like the term calling out. It has sort of a
authoritative.
Well, not an authoritative, but just sort of like a vindictive quality.
Yeah.
Not that I'm calling out Herzogin either.
Yeah, you are. That's it. And I know you liked it.
You're very vindictive.
Well. Putting people in their place.
I've noticed that.
It's why we have this channel, because someone is wrong on the internet.
That's actually one of the reasons why I started this entire men's rights endeavor, was because so many people were wrong on the internet.
I know, so. it's a play.
I have to admit that some of my motivations are less than noble.
Reticus says, $5 and says, I must interject 2 things. Must you? 1, your identity is a fight between you, society, and reality. You are forced to fight for what it is. And then the second thing, and he gives us an additional $5. 2 individualists realize they can only fix things on the individual level. Yeah, because, what? Okay, so, this is 2. It's not 2 individualists. This is the second item. Okay, thank you, Reticus. Food for thought. All right,
there you go.
Another 20 seconds.
All right, let's do it.
Viral, and Jordan Peterson became the most infamous intellectual in Canada overnight.
I mean, you are a provocateur.
I never said
You're like
anything.
the alt-right that you hate to be compared to. You want to stir things up.
I'm only a provocateur insofar as when I say what I believe to be true, it's provocative.
Okay.
Just pausing.
20 seconds? Yeah, we have, unfortunately, guys, the only reason why we get to have this out and not flagged by
is because we pause it every 20 seconds.
It's because
we might actually get dinged with a copyright claim from Channel 4, though. Expect that.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so basically Peterson says when he says something, it is provocative. So he's not intending to be provocative. It's just that the things that he says are considered to be provocative, which I'm not exactly sure how that's a gotcha. I mean, there's lots of things in regimes in the past who
should make people think, why is this provocative? That's that's the response that I get, you know.
All right, another 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
All the attention pushed Peterson's new book, 12 Rules for Life, to the top of the bestsellers list. It's a manual for young men that's equal parts pop psychology and self-help, but it also includes Peterson's unique spin on gender studies.
Pop psychology. This is one of the most well-cited psychologists out there, right? I forget who it was. That did a comparison between Pimlott, who was one of the 3 people at Wilfrid Laurier University who held the Star Chamber interrogation of Lindsay Shepherd, Herbert Pimlott, I believe, right? Compared the number of citations to Herbert Pimlott's work versus, and because he had said, well, I don't see him as a credible academic, and I don't think that his work is worth anything, blah blah blah. And then, like, orders of magnitude more times the citations for papers that Peterson has authored. He's extremely prolific. He's published a lot of papers, and they've gotten a lot of citations. And so, no, it's not pop psychology. I mean, it's packaged in such a way that the lay person can understand it. Like, was Martin Luther a pop theist? This is just pop theism. This is just pop scripture, right? This whole idea that, people should be able to read the Bible themselves because it should be published in their vernacular and in their language that they can read, and not be confined to only Latin, and to be interpreted by the priestly class, right? Would they have that's what they're saying here, is they're saying that if you actually take the literature, just like if you take legalese and you're like Leor, whatever his name is, of YouTuber Law, which everybody should go subscribe to his channel too, because he's quite interesting. The channel name is YouTuber Law. But he just breaks down the legalese and the legal principles in a way that people who are not lawyers can understand the basic principles at work in a given case, right? And this is what people like Steven Pinker and people like Jordan Peterson and people like Christina Hoff Sommers and Warren Farrell, they pick through all of that dry, academically worded crap, just like picking through a pile of contracts, and then they put it out in a form that normal people who haven't spent 4 years in university studying this particular subject can understand, right? That's not pop psychology, other than, oh wow, like he's essentially explained, like Einstein said, explained like as if to a child, right? So he understands the actual subject matter, unlike some of these people in the Priestley class who couldn't explain it to a child.
Redicus gives us $5 and says, if I remember right, Peterson is cited over 1,000 times, and Primlot was under 200. Bam!
Pimlott was like not even under 200. It was, I think.
Did I say Primlot?
Yes, you did.
I have Prim on the brain.
Emotional labor.
I think it was significantly less than 200, and I think it was mostly one paper that did the bulk of the work for him, and everything, and something like 60% of his papers had 0 citations.
Could you give us the channel name of the legal the person who breaks apart legal
YouTube
stuff?
law?
YouTuber
law. Yeah, YouTuber.
Yeah,
law.
his name is Leor. He's got an accent, so his name is Leor something. I forget what it is. But yeah, he goes into the Aquila versus Sargon thing, the Dick Masterson versus Maddox thing, all of the copyright shit. You know, he essentially he breaks it all down, and it's quite interesting. If you're interested in the law at all, and particularly if you're a YouTuber, you know, look at his videos on copyright law and the DMCA and stuff, and stay on, you know, because there are some things that people do, even people that I respect, they're like, this video is fair use, blah 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 blah, under the provisions of the DMCA, blah 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 blah. Yeah, that's meaningless. It doesn't do you any good. Having a disclaimer at the front of your video saying it's fair use doesn't do you any good. It's just a waste of space. So,
all right. Okay.
All right.
Let's do the next 20 seconds.
Let's do it.
Includes a lot of rankings of men and women on scales of 1 to 10, and a few direct repudiations of the feminist movement. The success of the book prompted a nationwide tour of sold-out theaters filled with adoring fans.
Folks, we are sold out, so please take every seat. There are seats that are reserved, but it's pretty obvious.
Okay, can we pause here? Well, he sells out. He's very popular. I like that they actually included a female fan. That's an interesting choice.
Yeah, and there's actually some walking in, too. Did you catch the bit where he says the book it talks about women in terms of 1 to 10 ratings?
And men.
And men.
And yeah, but that's not how. I don't think that's how the Vice.
No. They presented it as women and men in terms of 1 to 10 ratings.
Okay,
I think they're referring to the personality scores, personality test.
They may be, but I don't know. Like if that's how a person that's watching this video would interpret that.
Yeah, no, probably not. It could also be attractiveness hierarchies, because he talks about that too, right? He talks about what makes men attractive to women, what makes women attractive to men, and how women and men rate each other, and all of that. So maybe he cited the OkCupid data that showed that women on the site found 80% of men below average.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah. I guess another thing is okay. So clearly this Vice video is a bullshit hit piece that's trying to use whatever it can on Peterson to manipulate it in such a way that people who don't know who he is, that are like curious about the controversy, that use Vice as their source of news, much in the same way that Mike.com also did a hit piece on Peterson recently. the thing that seems to be the most useful for them, or the thing that they decided to choose out of the book, is this rating females on a scale of 1 to 10 dynamic. Like I'm just pointing out that of all the things that they're trying to get Peterson on, it seems like this is the one of the tactics that they find will probably have the most impact because it deals with women. You guys know what I'm saying? I'm just looking at it from Vice's perspective, I guess. And it's quiet. Why is it quiet? Where is everybody?
Oh, I had my mute button on.
Okay. All right.
Okay, let's do another 20 seconds.
All right. Let's do it.
I came all the way out here from Pennsylvania because he came to me in a point in my life where I really needed someone to look up to.
If you're highly educated, you realize where he's coming from. But if you're not highly educated, you understand what he's saying.
Just pausing for the banana.
There you go. If you're highly educated, you realize where he's coming from. If you're not highly educated, you understand what he's saying. Yeah. He's Martin Luther.
Yep.
Translating the Bible into frickin' the vernacular.
Zach Morano just gave us $5 and said, reading the book now. The 1 to 10 system is used as an example of understanding one's social status. 1 being celebrity, 10 being hobo. And that's my point. Like, he's using a 1 to 10 scale for something, but the way that Vice is referring to it, they just said scales of 1 to 10 on judging people. Which
and that would actually bring to mind, she's a 9, she's a 10, she's an 8.5, yes. Blah blah blah. Yeah, it wouldn't be like in terms of like this. It's essentially the same metrics that but it's also the same metrics that get used by the left when they're talking about income inequality. The top 1%, the bottom 99, blah blah blah, the bottom 20%, and all of this, right? So, we use metrics to measure things. And sometimes people and their socioeconomic status are, or their social status are included in the things that we want to measure and quantify. So,
all right.
Yeah.
20 seconds.
Okay.
This guy is got magnetism.
Dr. Peterson has changed my life. He has reminded me that I should first and foremost clean my room.
The first rule is stand up straight with your shoulders back. It's like, get ready. You've got things to do.
All right. Yeah, it's pretty innocuous.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably going to tell me that, and then I'm going to tell him, I got a broken back, so fuck off. So.
Yeah, I also have an issue with the stand up straight, shoulders back, but that my physiotherapist, or at least the person who did the course that I had to go to, said that you probably should do that. So there you go. A female physiotherapist got you and confirms what you had to say, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, well, my doctor confirmed that I can't actually do it, so.
Joey Jojo gives us $2 and says, that feel when 80% of men are that guy.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely hilarious. You're right, and then people say, well, maybe it's just about dating sites and stuff, and no, because men, the way they rated the female people, the women on the site, fell into a standard bell curve, right? So men have realistic assessments of women in terms of their desirability on a bell curve, and women see 80% of men as being in the bottom 50%.
Yeah, it's actually rational. Okay, let's another 20 seconds.
Okay.
There's chaos to confront. There's order to establish and revivify, and there's evil to constrain. And so that's what 12 Rules for Life is about.
After the talk, Peterson's fans lined up to ask questions. These were the first 2.
I'm just pausing it here because these questions are the best.
Oh, yeah.
I love these questions that Vice decided they were going to go with. So here we go.
Could Jewish individuals use their position of power to seek out revenge against places like Europe and Russia that have a history of expelling Jews?
Hold it.
Oy vey, shut it
Yeah,
down.
it's not even a question that was answered, but Vice did put them in. I wonder if, considering our experience with media, it's entirely possible that those two people were to Vice.
Oh, yeah, no, like, you know, honestly, up until this point, I was like, this is actually not bad for Vice. But yeah, I would suggest that if they're including really, really, really fucked up questions like this, that the people themselves are plants. So,
and we can make that allegation because we experienced something similar at the ICMI number 1, which Vice did cover.
Yeah.
And it was actually hilarious because the guy from GQ, what's his something Shartlet.
Jeff Sharlet.
Shartlet.
It's not Shartlet, although
no, I keep hearing
he is a shart and a small one. Not even a glorious large shart.
It's just one of those,
but
you meant to fart, but it's an accident, like you didn't expect.
But you can make your way
there.
through the grocery store as long as you don't.
You can stay on the elevator.
Yeah, and not
as long as you don't wiggle your butt too much.
Yeah, you're gonna be okay till you make it to the bathroom. He's a Shartlet, Jeff Shartlet.
Shartlet. Okay, but he actually brought somebody who was a pedophile to the men's rights conference. He planted him at the men's rights conference to try to discredit it. Media is not above creating its own salacious bull. And the irony is that my husband, Jonathan, talked about a period of time when he was in his early 20s where he was assaulted by a group of 16-year-old girls, which we've later found out is actually happens quite a bit. It's a very common form of assault. When 16-year-old girls talk about their perpetration of sexual violence on surveys, they often describe in a group assaulting an older man who would be up shit creek if anything happened. And my husband described this assault to Shartlet, and Shartlet described it as every man's dream. So Shartlet apparently believes that having sex with underage girls is desirable. And also that it also brought a pedophile. I wonder if this pedophile was like one of Shartlet's personal close associates.
It's called projection.
Yeah, it is projection. And and the fact is he included both of those things in the article. He included the fact that every time I saw that pedophile, he was with Shartlet at the convention. And he included the fact that that guy was at the convention and the fact that he considered it to be, I guess, his greatest fantasy. Shartlet's greatest fantasy is the sex with underage girls. So, I don't know. 12, 11, 9, whatever. So, anyway, he brought this guy in and he planted it. And this is stuff the media does. This is what they do. They have a passing familiarity with the truth. And if they don't like a story, if they think it's too dry, they'll juice it up with some salacious content like this.
Or
I'm guessing...
Or they're not really journalists so much as they're activists, and they're just using journalism as the platform to conduct their activism.
Well,
so it's not just being done because they want to drive more traffic and make money, but it's also because they ideologically are, inspired to act on this.
Yeah, they have a narrative to promote. Yeah.
And they said that these were the first 2 questions. I have my doubts. Okay, let's do another 20 going. Seconds.
As you know, last month, the New York Times wrote about a Pentagon program investigating the UFO phenomenon. I wonder what your thoughts are on the UFO phenomenon, specifically alien abductions.
Okay, the UFOs.
Okay. Putting these 2 questions back to back is a little weird, but I could actually see somebody asking about what do you think about this release of documents regarding UFOs. I just can't imagine that they would expect Jordan to have an answer for that, because why would he even be thinking about that? He's a psychologist. He's
unless it's like you talk about the Bible in your book a lot, and here come aliens, checkmate atheists or checkmate religious people or whatever. Like, what do you think about aliens if they're real under the context of all of the Bible work that you do? I don't know, or it's just trolling.
I don't know either. But let's see if there is anything more to this question.
Okay.
And how the Nephilim and the Book of Enoch might be involved.
Okay, so
the Book of Enoch. So yeah, he asked if it's involved.
Very important question.
Yeah, it's extremely. It's actually a question that resides at the heart of every young man seeking meaning in his life.
It's a burning question. It should reside at the heart of everyone. And this is the central issue of our age. Book of Enoch, what does it mean? How much is it influenced? The Enochians, are they around
and what does it have to do with the UFOs that were detected by the Pentagon? So,
and to preempt any like the title of this video is salacious, of this particular Rantzerker. It's actually farcical and tongue-in-cheek, but these are the questions that Vice chose to include. These are the questions that Vice chose to include, and they chose to include them because they were the most salacious things they could find.
Yeah,
during this lecture.
but what I like about it is that they actually did include some of his response, like whoa, 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 and then the audience laughing, right? At the JQ, right? And then I'm sure that there's going to be some laughter involved in this UFO question, right? And so I'll credit them with that these questions are not being presented as as the serious questions about
like
his
more
book.
Interested in making this, like, if they wanted this to be like really serious and scary, they probably wouldn't have included these questions. So instead, maybe
and they certainly
like a little bit, like, oh, look at how stupid these people are.
They certainly wouldn't have included the audience laughter, right, at the absurdity of the question. So,
or even Peterson's dismissal of it, where he said, "Okay, hold on." Instead, they might have just cut it off right when the question ended. All right, 20 more seconds.
Sure.
Oh.
They even kept in his little giggle.
After his sold-out show in New York,
was his little
I met
giggle
Dr. Peterson at his home in Toronto. We started off discussing his work, but the conversation quickly veered into something else. Who is...
Okay, I'm just pausing it there for the banana, because...
What did it veer into? I
we'll
wonder.
Find out.
Okay.
The target audience. Who are you trying to reach?
Well, partly me, and then partly people who feel that there might be more in them than they're currently manifesting. People who've been fed a nauseating saccharine diet of rights and freedoms for...
Pausing it for the...
Yeah, I know. This is particularly difficult because he's not doing the fire hose of shit that we usually have. They're considered statements that take a while to actually articulate. So
well, he's very, very, very careful with the words that he uses.
Yes.
For like 50 years with no counterbalance of responsibility. And most people find almost all the genuine meaning in their life in the adoption of responsibility.
It seems to me that they're sort of...
Okay, so because I want to comment on this. I agree that there's a general sense, but I think it's very specific to certain groups.
No. As you know, like okay, the adoption of responsibility. What is having kids? It's taking on a massive responsibility, right? And there are women who do it because, as particularly young women who do it because I want to have someone in my life who loves me unconditionally. And every single young woman who ever articulates something like that I go ahead and tell them that child up until the age of 5 is going to be a complete sociopathic black hole of demand, right? And you are going to be expected to throw things into it, or it's going to throw love and affection and cuddling and food and diaper changes and attention and all of that shit, right? You are going to have to throw shit into that gaping fucking black hole of sociopathy for 5 years of your life before you even get anything resembling a return of your affection back, right? And you won't get real unconditional love from that child probably ever. Probably ever. What you're getting is dependence. And so think twice if that's why you're going to have a child. Now, if you have a child understanding what it really entails and what you're not going to get out of it, because you're never going to get unconditional love. And the closest you're ever going to get is when your kid's 35 and they've been living on their own for 10 years. And then they finally come back to you and go like, oh, Mom, you were right about so many things. And I'm sorry about the hard time I gave you. Like if you go into it, that is how you find meaning out of it. Right? That is how you derive meaning out of it. It's not out of what you get, because you get nothing. You get nothing but burdens and obligations and responsibility and blah, blah, blah. You get nothing out of that child other than your voluntary taking on of that burden and that responsibility. So it's not just about putting responsibility on men. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about finding meaning in responsibility. I don't think women who have babies because they want somebody who's going to love them no matter what, I don't think that they're going to derive any meaning out of that relationship.
Okay, fair enough. That wasn't quite where I was going, but my point was that there are certain groups that are allowed to abdicate responsibility and other groups that are definitely not.
Yes.
Society. So, but in terms of the child rearing, I find it remarkable that there are women who would say something like, I want someone to love me unconditionally, so I'll have a child. But they can't manage to make a relationship with an adult man work. Like, I'm astounded by that. Why would you expect more from something like you were talking about that has infinite needs than you are from another adult?
Even a dog is not going to, like, cats are just like a no-go, right? Like they love you as a piece of property. Dogs will love you, but they won't love you unconditionally. You can't abuse them and have them love you. You can have them fear you and try to appease you, but they won't love you.
Yeah, but unconditional love it seems to be almost a fiction. And
it is.
And I don't know, I just find it remarkable. Why do they think they're going to get more from a child than they would a man? And why don't they realize that the reason why they want a child is because they'll get something that can't walk away from them, whereas a man could conceivably walk away from them. And
that's really what it is having a captive mirror, captive something to mirror your what you wish to see mirrored back at you, which is, I love you, Mommy, and I'm telling you that so you don't beat me with a wire coat hanger.
Ugh. I don't think people who keep an adult relationship like that, single mothers by choice stuff, you should be able to keep an adult relationship before you have a relationship with someone who can't walk away from you. I'm just putting that out there.
Agreed.
And I don't even know, today, Jonathan, my husband, he made me breakfast, he made me cappuccino, to start my morning. I mean, I don't know if that's unconditional, but it's certainly love. It's certainly consideration.
It's a demonstration of love. This is one of the things that my guy likes to hear it. But I am more demonstrative, I guess. I'm kind of a little more like a guy in that way. So I'll do the little things, like go help him brush his car off in the morning, or you know, make a special lunch for him or something like that for him to take to work, or bring him coffee in bed and stuff like that. And I tend to think of those things as enough, and sometimes he has to remind me that, yeah, you got to say it every now and then too.
We'll make me a special lunch.
I did make you. There's 4 special lunches in the fridge. They just need to get nuked. Anyhow.
Okay, we got some super chats, and your dog seems to be wanting to get in on all of this action.
Yeah, unfortunately, my wife left, and now I'm locked in this room. The door's closed. So Jojo thinks he's alone, and he's just howling and crying, and it's breaking my heart, but I have to ignore him.
Yes.
Sorry if he's really loud, and you're hearing my dog howling in the background.
My dog, actually, she's getting better. She's in her quiet sensory deprivation tank, which is the dog crate with the blanket over it, so that it's dark in there and she can nap. And she's not doing anything. She's just having a nap. It's beautiful.
What I'm trying to get at with the women who seem to want to get a child to have unconditional love. I think, like I was saying, I think it's just love that can't walk away. The other thing is that I think a lot of women get into this mentality where they just look at what isn't done rather than what is, what they're not getting rather than what they are. And I know I do too, and I have to challenge that.
I think we all do. We all absolutely do that. And we have to remind ourselves of I think what the ways in which our partner selflessly often contributes to, you know, our well-being. And I mean, it really is kind of like that Chris Rock bit where it's like, hey Dad, thanks for, you know, you sure knocked out that rent this month. Oh, sure is easier to read with all this light, right? You know, that it's mama, thank your mother for this delicious dinner, right? But I think that and I think that the contributions of men, they do need to be recognized in that same way. My ex used to always sort of instruct my children after dinner, you know, thank your mom for the delicious dinner. And I don't know that I ever instructed my kids to thank their dad for the delicious roof over their head. I mean, we both helped put that roof over their heads, but I mean, it wasn't the same. It wasn't as regular. It wasn't as often. Their dad had to do something special, like take them to the beach and roast hot dogs or something like that, for me to say thank your dad for, you know, doing that something out of the ordinary. Whereas I would cook dinner
Brian,
every night.
Mute and deal with your canine. I just wanted to say that, and I apologize for being so cruel to Brian. No, I don't. Yeah. All right. So we don't thank our fathers for a lot of the stuff because it is invisible. It's like the space that you live in. It might as well be water that you swim in. But there is a huge amount that fathers do for their children. Again, isn't recognized. And also that partners, like male partners, do for their female partners. And like I said, we get into this mentality that it's never enough. We always look at what isn't done rather than what is. And I had a point, but unfortunately it was howled out of my head by Brian's dog.
That poor dog.
I know, I'm going to just blame him for everything.
Yeah, I think you should. Poor Jojo, though.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, he's, you know, Jojo, he's suffering. He's like away from his owner for an hour. It's just heartrending.
No, it is. It really is. Okay, my dog. If I were to get up right now, she's in the sensory deprivation tank. She can see nothing. But if I got up and went to the bathroom or got up and went to the kitchen or whatever, right, she'd be fine, right? But if I got up and she heard a noise like me picking up my coat, she would be freaking out. Absolutely 100%. When she sees me pack my suitcase, she starts to get
I'm back.
really upset. So,
all right, good.
20
I had
seconds?
to fritter. Yeah, let's do another 20 seconds. Hopefully what I was going to say comes back to me now that your dog
Two
is no longer
versions of you
howling.
that are floating around. The one is the scholarly work that you've done over your career.
Yeah.
And then there's this online version. I mean, do you feel split at all right now?
Fragmented is more accurate than just split. The political split that you're talking about is...
Just pausing. Hey, look, they both don't have shoes on.
They're Canadians.
Yeah, they're Canadians. You don't wear your shoes in the house when you're Canadian,
God,
because when you're fucking Canadian, you're walking through fucking snowbanks to get to your freaking door. You're wearing boots covered in freaking snow. You never wear your shoes in the house, and salt and sand.
It's totally obscene. It's obscene. Yeah. It's fucking obscene.
Yeah.
That's it, Brian. You're off the show.
And be thankful it's winter, or they'd be both in their bare feet.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm sure there are some people in the chat that want to see what Jordan Peterson's bare feet look like, but I'm not among them.
You probably just launched a whole bunch of fanfic right there.
All right, let's move on. This is something you never considered, and here I am bringing it.
The humanities at the universities have become intolerably corrupt. They don't teach people to read. They don't teach them to think. They don't teach them to speak. They don't have them read great works. They've become indoctrination factories for a social justice ideology.
Just pausing for the banana.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, no, but I mean, they have largely become the humanities departments, particularly any course that ends in the word studies, is pretty much just an indoctrination center. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I have a personal theory that I wanted to run by you, and it is that college right now and universities are their own ecosystem, and that professors and students both have been sort of trapped in a war of ideas, as you put it, that keeps escalating. But that once you walk outside the gates of that university, that it seems very contained to the university.
Yeah, except when you're passing federal legislation based on the fact that gender identity and gender expression are socially constructed.
Yeah.
You know, then that's well and truly left the university. And this is like, and no, it's not just in universities, because in Alberta, we're having a big battle right now with the Catholic school system, because we have two publicly funded school systems. We have the public school system and we have the Catholic school system, and they both receive government funding. They're both subject to government mandates. And so now we're having all kinds of things being pushed into the Catholic school system that the Catholic, I guess, population really don't like. One of which is it is now, if your child comes out at school as LGBTQ 2S plus, 2S being two-spirited, you are not allowed to discuss any of that with the parents. And this is all the way down to elementary school. If you have a kid in grade 3 who says, I'm a wingless yellow-scaled dragon sometimes, but at other times I'm an ornate and expansive building, and that's how I identify, right? You're not allowed to actually bring that to the attention of that child's parents anymore, because it's a violation of the child's gender identity and could put them at risk of, whatever. And so, I mean, there's not even any room for judgment on the part of a teacher to say, or a guidance counselor or whatever, to say to that kid, do you think your parents would be really mad at you, would punish you for having these feelings, right? And then make that decision. Or do you think that your parents would be okay with it, but you're just too uncomfortable to tell them, right? Would you like some help in disclosing that to your parents, whatever? And they're mandating all kinds of things, including in this religious-based school system, that a huge proportion of the Albertan population, we're essentially Diet Texas, for Christ's sake, in Alberta, that they're objecting to, and it's taking a lot of control of not just the general education of children, but this sort of indoctrination into these ideas of gender being socially constructed, and there are like 32,000 genders, and we need to be accepting of all of them, and all of these things, right? These are all things that are being introduced into the curriculum, not just in universities, but in K-12 education as well. So, you know, like when my kids were in grade 8 and they did sex ed, their sex ed unit, they were sent home with sort of printouts of a glossary of terms that included, you know, rim jobs and all kinds of other stuff that I didn't necessarily think that at age 13 my kids, I mean, like I was fine with it, but I could understand why some parents might be uncomfortable with their 13-year-old child being taught what a rim job is in health class. You know, like things are getting a little wonky. And a lot of it has to do with what's happening in the universities, because people who are in education programs who are studying to become teachers are all indoctrinated with this shit too, because it's all part of the humanities and the social sciences. So,
got a couple super chats. Redicus gives us $5 and says, rule number 3, don't let your kids do things that make you hate them. I assume that that's from the 12 Rules for Life book.
From the book, yeah. No, that was actually one of the things that my mom used to say to me. I don't, because I, you know, like me and my sisters, right? You hate me. And she's like, I don't hate you. I love you too much to allow you to behave in a way that will make everybody else hate you.
Yeah, it harkens back to the beginning where, you know, he's talking to the trender, and that person says, you're not using my pronouns, that makes you my enemy. And he's like, I know you think I'm your enemy, but, you know, I just don't think this is good for you. It's like he's like being, even in that instance, he's trying to be fatherly, and that person is rejecting it in the same way that a spoiled child would. So this is rule number 3 in action, essentially. And Meximan and Cheese gives us $5 and says, broke, but here are a few bucks. Thanks for what you do. Well, thank you, Meximan and Cheese. 20 more seconds?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay.
To the university. What I don't see is sort of this sort of veering towards apocalypse.
Oh yeah, it's spreading into HR, into corporations throughout the U.S. through HR departments, very, very rapidly.
In what ways, though? In a way that is not sort of like, hey, how about you not grab like the ass of your coworker?
NBC is regulating hugging.
Yep, this is the Me Too stuff that I was referencing at the beginning of this.
Well, it's not just the Me Too stuff, right? Like, I mean, Me Too is like sort of the horrible, awful Frankenstein monster that has emerged from the dreams of Dr. Frankenstein, you know, that is regulating hugs and all of this stuff. I mean, like there has been a progression since the Clarence Thomas trials, right? Of like an imposition, sort of a regulation of interactions, not just between people in positions of power over others within corporations and within institutions, but interactions between individuals of identical status. And this is, I mean, Me Too is just the culmination of Title IX and the Dear Colleague letter and all of these things that have been, you know, and part of me is wondering if there is any way for men and women to exist as colleagues, not as men and women, but as colleagues in public life, where these demands won't be on the table, in the cards, and just be pushed through by women. I like, honestly, you look at segregation in workplaces, segregation in schools, segregation in all of these areas of life that used to exist before the suffragettes and then the second wave. I'm kind of wondering if it's even possible for men and women to actually exist side by side in those arenas, without having men be at the mercy of this kind of thing. Because it's not new. It's not new. It's why women used to have chaperones whenever they were alone with a man. Only now it's the man who needs the chaperone.
No, I think it was always the man who needed a chaperone.
Well,
actually.
yeah, but I mean, like, you needed a chaperone for both parties, and it was acknowledged that it was for both parties, and the woman needed to actually conform to some of the restrictions on the interactions between men and women that were provided or maintained by chaperones, right? Both men and women were expected to adjust their behavior around the opposite sex, but now it's just, since the 1980s, maybe the 1990s, there's been this push to allow women to behave however they want, to express themselves however they want, and be able to dictate whether men are even allowed to notice them doing it. So, let alone comment on it, let alone object to it, let alone say, you look awfully good in that dress.
Well, here's the thing. If we don't deal with the issues that MeToo are bringing up and listen and believe culture, and I know some people mention and say, "Oh, Harvey Weinstein, it was important. This was important to do." It wasn't. Harvey Weinstein should have been dealt with in the legal system.
Well, he was dealt with in the legal system. That's the whole point. There were all those sealed settlements and all those gag orders and those non-disclosure agreements and all of those monetary payoffs to all of those women who were content to simply maintain a whisper network, and if any other young women fell through the cracks of that, well, whatever,
That's fucking amazing to me.
Yeah.
They would throw other women under the bus like that for money. That's disgusting. I can't fucking believe it.
I mean, like,
I can believe
there were women who tried to get an actual, actually went to the police, right? And were essentially told, yeah, there's just not enough here, at least in terms of your particular case. And like, there is a problem with someone in power being able to have a DA in their pocket, and stuff like that. I mean, there's a problem there, but
okay, who's eating the mic?
Not me.
No.
Okay, all right.
But essentially, like like, Weinstein is a much more complex case than MeToo would have you believe, and I can guarantee you that there are women, possibly even women who accepted settlements, who willingly traded sexual favors, who put themselves on offer for the opportunities that he could provide, right? I mean, it's the difference between prostitution and sex trafficking, okay? Prostitution is voluntary, sex trafficking is not. And what you have is a situation where I am sure there are some women who engaged in voluntary prostitution who are now saying that they were sex trafficked, right? And the fact that there are women willing to engage in that kind of voluntary prostitution places an expectation on women who find themselves sex trafficked, to not an expectation, but an assumption on them that they were just engaging in willing prostitution too. So it's a very, very complex issue And the whole idea of a hashtag campaign around Weinstein and what went on there, like I did an interview for Huffington Post over this, and my response to her questions was something like 4,000 words long, right? That's how much I had to say about the context and the nuance around Weinstein and around all of this entire situation. And somehow we're supposed to be able to capture it in 280 characters.
That sounds like it could have been a video.
I turned it into a blog post. So
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
I just wanted to finish my thought. If this whole situation, and I do not view it as positive. I know some people think that it's potentially positive. It's not, as far as I'm. There's no reason. It may bring to light the fact that these extrajudicial lynchings can destroy entire projects, but there's nothing good about what's going on, because it is extrajudicial. It's just listen and believe. If a woman makes an allegation, it should automatically in punishment, and it's probably going to be self-correcting at some point. I mean, you say that you don't know if men and women can be colleagues in this, and they can't, not in the current atmosphere, because what's going to happen is that its variations or whatever it mutates to in 2 years, 5 years, whatever, listen and believe is going to get us to a crisis point. It's going to destroy so much of the functioning of society that men are going to have to ask themselves, okay, the men in power, because the men who are currently keeping everything running, and that includes the government, as much as we don't want to say that, and I know there's a lot of anti-status, those men are going to come to a crisis point, and they're going to have to make a decision between keeping society running as the petrodollar is spiraling down and everything can't be funded anymore, keep everything running and keeping women in the government. And there's going to be a choice made, and that choice will be to get women out of the government, and then to revoke women's suffrage, and then to get women out of corporations. And it'll be made because at some point there's going to have to be a choice between continuing whatever society we can remain having and allowing women these freedoms and the ability to walk unchecked and accuse any man anywhere, no matter what he's doing, no matter what service he's providing for society, and get him removed from that service. There's a breaking point that's going to come. And either those men will choose to just allow society to descend in shitter until we become like a North American Zimbabwe, or they will kick women out, and women will have orchestrated their own return to not being citizens, to not having the vote, not being allowed in government, not being allowed in institutions of higher learning, not being allowed in corporations. Or we can directly question and start dealing with the listen and believe culture and making something that allows men and women to be colleagues, to deal with each other on more equal terms. Right now, what we have is not sustainable, and it will be of listen and believe the women of MeToo that will ensure that women like me, when I'm in my 60s, I will probably have to get like a signature for my husband or my father, if he's still alive, to even go travel. They are going to do that to me, and it pisses me the fuck off. There's your rant for the day.
Boom.
Bam.
20 more seconds?
Let me see where we're at in terms of super chat.
Oh, we just got one from Joey Jojo for $2 where he says that when Feel never hugged a girl. I'm pretty sure he meant to write that Feel when, but
I think actually it's time to end it. It's time to end the show. Okay. Unfortunately, we only got through 5 minutes.
We got through 5 minutes.
More than half.
Minutes. More than half. Yeah.
More than half.
That's
that's
huge. That's huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to stop the stream.
Yeah, we're going to stop the stream because I got other work to do, and I want to get to the after show, which is going to be a reading from 12 Rules. A Solution to Chaos. Was it a solution?
Antidote.
12
Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos.
12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos. That's going to be the after show. If you want to join us, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. If you need an alternative option to Patreon, it's feedthebadger.com. And if you put in $5 a month to keeping this show running, you can join us in the after show. You can watch all of our after shows. You can watch all kinds of special content. You can join me in the Discord and listen to me ramble, not drunkenly because I never get drunk, but almost drunkenly. Ramble in text, all of my thoughts, just spilling them out all over the place like so much bird seed in a yard full of pigs. Okay, that went somewhere weird. All right, so www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Come join us in the after show. We'll have fun. We'll talk to Jordan Peterson's. We'll talk about his 12 rules some more. We'll talk about the bird seed. The bird seed. Okay.
And that's that.